Hello, and welcome to Living Spark, a project of the Spark of Humanity Network. I am your hostess, Danielle O'Hallisey, and this is, of course, being brought to you through the fine people at Onion River Community Access, also known as Orca Media. Here we talk about the Spark of Humanity philosophy, practice, and we're trying to really bring it down to a level that we can all work with in any situation. We're not trying to remain exclusive to people who have a lot of time to meditate or a lot of time to really, I don't know, to do more elaborate ways of working this into their lives. What is the Spark of Humanity, you ask? Well, I don't blame you. It seems rather ephemeral sometimes. On our website, thesparkofhumanity.net, you will find some information under the heading What We Believe, and there are other pages there as well. I recommend it to get a clearer sense of the purpose here, but I'm going to read just a bit of that mission statement under What We Believe. The insight that there is a spark of humanity in everyone is the foundation of the Spark of Humanity Network. We have discovered, and that's an active word, we're going to come back around to that. We have discovered that as we connect with and affirm the spark in others, we are claiming our personal sparks and becoming agents of transformation. And yes, I flagged the word discovered because we believe can be challenging. If I have a belief, it can be born of dogma, it can be born of what I was told to believe when I was a child, it can be any number of things, but to be something that one has discovered means that through our action, through our life experience, we have observed this. When people say, oh, you believe in blah, 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 and they sound dismissive, I say to them, I believe in it the way that you believe in gravity, through direct apprehension, through direct experience. And if you tell me that you don't believe in gravity, I'll get a bowling ball and hold it over your foot and ask you to stand still while I release it. It is a thing that we have discovered individually and collectively. We discuss it, we practice it, another word that I'll come back to later on. We practice honing that experience that it might grow. And yes, as the little bit that I just read to you says, we have observed that embracing the spark, embracing the humanity in others through what some would call compassion, empathy, visualization, that any of those things reaffirms the other spark, whether they know we're doing it or not. And I find it works better if they don't, like saying it to them. I am, confirming your spark. I'm affirming your humanity right now. Sounds pretty condescending, and I don't think it's very effective. But yes, those are things that we have experienced, and therefore we can say we believe those things, but it is not through a kind of blind faith. And yes, you will have watched Martha Holden's series, I hope, Living Mosaic. Those are wonderful broadcasts, and they elucidate the spark of humanity quite well. Here we're trying to bring it down to a place where, in a busy life, in a life that's overwhelming in some ways or in many ways, that we're able to find the opportunities to practice. Now, last time, I have structured these sessions, by the way, to be, first of all, visiting the homework that I gave myself the previous time, then introducing a new topic, and then setting my homework for the next session. We're currently doing sessions every 2 weeks. I will love it when somebody calls in via the number that's at the bottom of your screen from time to time, or who logs into the Zoom session, so that you don't have to talk. It's just be nice to see your friendly face while I'm doing these sessions. Keep it in mind, however you access these. perfectly all right. And if you access them long after 2025 or even shortly after, then and watching them on YouTube, that's also lovely. Last time's homework was to visualize world peace. Now, to give you a little bit of background, I was talking about how when I was first learning how to drive and then later learning how to drive in a city, I was frequently would see bumper stickers, and a lot of them were big global kind of imperatives, like save the whales, end world hunger, free Tibet. And all of those are beautiful, beautiful thoughts. There's nothing at fault in any of those statements or in any call to action about any of those things. But of course, they're not things that I can do. And when I see a single bumper sticker telling me to end world hunger, it is a struggle to picture such a thing. It's a struggle to do anything about it. But if there were more room on a bumper sticker to say something like, do something about hunger, that might have, for me in my adolescence and young adulthood, that might have given me a different perspective. This is something I can do. I can do something about it. I can give money to someone who's doing something about world hunger, but I can't personally end world hunger, or I can go and volunteer at a soup kitchen, whatever. But the one that rang a bell for me was one that said, visualize world peace. And I never found a way to cringe from that one. I just found it the right size challenge. That how will I visualize world peace? I always found it frustrating because I knew it must be something within my reach, but it was also something that I couldn't put a finger on, and I could rarely do anything that actually inspired me to visualize peace as a global phenomenon. One of the things that I struggled with is the understanding that peace is not the absence of conflict. It begins with, and it is contained by, I should say, no, it's accompanied by an absence of conflict. But peace is something deeper. And as I've struggled with that, I've come across a few examples when I felt like, oh, I'm visualizing world peace, even though it's a small local example. We've already spoken about 1947, just before India became a free nation, leaving the British Empire. Remember, of course, that this was immediately after World War II, that at that time in India, the pacifist and activist Mahatma Gandhi, he wanted independence, but he did not want the country to be divided into a Muslim nation and a Hindu nation. So he chose to do a long walk along the border of the Hindu region and the Muslim region, knowing that everyone would know that if he were assassinated during this walk, it would erupt into war. Nevertheless, it was a huge risk, and he did it. And it brought a peace there, which unfortunately, a year later, just before he was assassinated, when India achieved freedom from the empire, it was simultaneously divided into two nations. So there was a win and a loss. It's easy to look at those setbacks as, well, you failed, you didn't bring peace to the region. But I don't think he would have agreed with that. So now, 10 minutes into the 25 minutes I have here, I was just looking at the clock, I'm finally getting around to saying, what examples can I give you about what I've done in the past 2 weeks to visualize peace? There have been meditations. You'll notice that I have a lovely curtain behind me. I set this space up as a studio for Zoom calls and occasional YouTube things. So when I moved here to Southern California, so I have a space that's somewhat ready for this kind of thing. But yeah, those rolling hills, the lovely colors. Anyone who's been in Vermont and looked west over the lake, Lake Champlain, and over the Adirondacks will find this familiar, because the ways that the mountains stack up, and each separate chunk of mountain has a different hue to it. That is a lovely place, and it is evoked by that curtain, and therefore it allows me to evoke a peaceful time in my own life and a peaceful space that I've enjoyed in my life. Yeah, so that's one way to visualize world peace in Tibetan Buddhism, and I do spend some time with Tibetan monks. Never going to proselytize here, never going to talk about religion in a way that suggests that anyone should do what I'm doing. And I will, when I do refer to Tibetan Buddhism, I will usually refer to the parts there are very large segments of the teachings that are about secular perspective that have nothing to do with Buddhism per se. They speak about Tibet in some of the prayers, and they call it the land of snows, or the land of snowy mountains. And that's another familiar thing, that having lived in Vermont most of my life, that's a very peaceful image to me. I realize there are some Vermonters who might see this and say, easy for you to say, you're in Southern California, we're freezing right now, but it is a very peaceful visualization for me. All of those things to say that ultimately, when I really try to visualize world peace, a peaceful setting, very often in my mind doesn't have any people in it. And that is not, that's not what we're looking for, is it? Because we're looking for harmony among humanity. I won't pretend that there's an easy way to look at that or look for it, but another topic that we're going to be very careful about here is political discourse, because I never want to represent a political perspective, and I don't want to. I try to see something in both sides in all sides of every question, which I'm not necessarily given enough time here to present as such. When you see me do this, that means I'm looking at my timer to make sure I don't overrun the session. But I do. I could say I volunteer my time, which there's some truth to that, but I also am a member of something that I get a great deal of benefit from. I'm just the moderator in a group of older adults who meet occasionally. And during our last session, the third rail was coming up constantly. People wanted to talk about politics from the perspective of, what if I lose my Social Security? What if I lose my Medicare? Some of us, myself included, have such a low income that we're on both Medicare and Medicaid. What will I do if my health care suddenly costs more than I have coming in through Social Security every month? And that discussion was, we were at risk of having the group rip itself apart, like small group yesterday. But all people who shared a common political perspective, some people saying, I cannot talk about this. I cannot have my fears whipped up and inflamed. And the other group saying, I can't not talk about this. We're here to support one another. My job as moderator was more difficult than usual. And because I have strong feelings about, I'm strongly in both camps. Don't talk about things that are going to upset me. I'm here to, in that case, to share the company of other older adults. This is in Long Beach, California, but I'm firmly in that camp. Some of the time I'm firmly in the camp of, I need to talk about this. And so the line that I began to see forming was that people who couldn't talk about it, at least right then, were very upset, and so were the others. And it started to escalate into this tight-knit group began to not just crosstalk, as we often talk about in group dynamics, but we began to escalate into argument across the line. And it was in that situation my duty as moderator to rein that in, talk about how, yeah, you can talk about your feelings about the situation, but to talk about politics external to oneself, extrinsically, is not what we're here for. And I was concerned more than once that individuals were going to leave the group, or that individuals from either side, that individuals were going to leave the group from either side of that line. That tricky place of bringing people who typically talk in great harmony and work together on many topics in supporting one another, to rein that in and say, you can talk about your feelings about this, but you cannot talk about the extrinsic fears and so on. Why am I talking about that in relationship to world peace? I have watched marriages dissolve on both sides of the political aisle. I've watched nominally conservative families and nominally liberal families dissolve under the duress of political stress. And it usually is around this kind of thing. Hey, we agree about everything, but you don't want to talk about it, and I need to talk about it nonstop. I counseled a couple recently to try limiting their discourse to an hour a day. Hey, every day after dinner, we can talk about this for an hour. We're not going to send each other links to, upsetting videos during the rest of our time, and we're not going to. So, is that visualizing world peace? Peace isn't just cessation of discord. It is harmony. It is seeking and encouraging harmony. It doesn't come fast. It doesn't come overnight. Just visualizing it, and that's all I ask myself to do. It's all I ask others to do when you can handle it, is also, frankly, really, really challenging. I acknowledge that. I struggled with it a lot. So the topic that I had set myself flows directly from that, and you'll see that although I spent longer in reviewing my homework from last time than I usually do, you'll see that that it lends itself to blending right into this next section, and that is about habit and practice. Habit and practice. When you discuss, when people want to lose weight, they very rarely say, I'm trying to change my habits, right? I'm trying to lose 5 pounds. I'm trying to lose 10 pounds. My doctor says I need to lose 20, whatever. We don't, and I've had a lot of interaction with my own weight from when I was younger, worrying about how people saw me, and then also as I've aged, the health impacts of weight. I have had plenty of times to think about this. My observation is we can lose the 5 pounds and put it back on like that and that, most of us. And we do. And yet to permanently reduce your weight to a different level requires changing habits. And getting to that place requires observation of current habits and a continual way of trying to bring new habits into play, not just ending things, not just, I can't eat cake anymore, for an example, but rather the longer term habitual changes that are necessary. That's just a single example, but I think it's one that's very familiar to us. I always point out, guitars back here. There are more over here, some behind me. Yeah, I'm a musician. I'm a kind of retired musician. I don't gig anymore, but I still enjoy it. And you don't give a lesson. I've taught a lot of people how to play guitar, and you don't like give a lesson and say, okay, I'll see you in a week. Let's don't practice that, or don't do anything with the information I just gave you. It needs to be internalized. And that means it needs to be practiced. You need to try a new thing and see where that gets you. I will say that when this spark thing came into my life, I didn't immediately recognize it as something that I had already practiced over the course of my life, because the language was different from what I would have used. I won't go. I might next time go into some of the visualizations I had used, but I worked with chronically mentally ill patients, some of whom were violent, and they were or had been violent, and they were living in the community again and needed to be monitored on a really regular basis. And I needed to be available when someone was having an experience that might have led to violence. I needed to go out and put myself into that situation and try to bring not global peace, but try to bring peace to the moment. And I developed a habit of just getting out of my car and picturing a spot that was in the sky that was sort of a bridge between me and the person before I walked in their door. And it was just a moment. And I believe that now that I'm part of the Spark of Humanity Network, I believe that it's fair to say that I was visualizing a string, a line between their spark and mine. I found I was much more effective in those situations by using that visualization before I interacted with the person. And I found that I didn't often lose sleep. That was a big problem with that job. You'd literally talk someone off of a bridge. I've done that on a few occasions. Or you would talk somebody down who had a knife in their hand, a gun in their hand, and you talk them down and through the situation. And they go home and it would hit you what you'd just been through, and you wouldn't sleep. I found it was better for me and for the other person to momentarily visualize that bridge, which I now recognize is a bridge between my spark and theirs. When I first came across Martha's sessions and began to join her and watch them, I challenged myself to put the thing into practice. And the first thing that came up that allowed me to do that was just a small disagreement with someone. I live in a retirement community. There's a lot of cranky old people, and I like to often point out that I am one of them. And so spending that time, so someone confronted me about something that clearly she was in distress, clearly had dementia, and I didn't know her. But that moment of taking a beat and picturing a literal spark, a literal glow within myself, but more importantly, hers, somehow that situation just got diffused, and she quickly recognized that I was on her side. I wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to feel some peace. And somehow, rapidly, the situation de-escalated. I was never at risk in that situation. I was never at physical risk or at risk of being ostracized or anything else. So it was an easy example, but it is a practice. It is a practice session. You don't walk out onto the stage of Carnegie Hall having never played a scale or never having, practiced your instrument. You don't put yourself in those situations. So what I'm going to do is spend the next 2 weeks looking for opportunities on a regular basis to practice seeking the spark in others, practice strengthening the spark in others, practice seeing my own spark when I'm in a situation that I find difficult, confrontational, frightening, agitating. That's what I'm going to do over the next couple of weeks. And if you're coming across this, watching it live, or coming across it in some other way, I want to invite you to do the same. This again is Living Spark. It's the practical wing of the Spark of Humanity Network, brought to you through the kindness and generosity of Orca Media in Montpelier, Vermont. I've been your hostess, Danielle O'Hallisey. And yeah, please continue to join us. And if you get an opportunity, share the sessions on YouTube. Thank you very much.